Welcome back to Market on Close. I'm Marley, Kayden here in Chicago alongside Sam Vadas at the New York Stock Exchange. We'll close out how we usually do with some final thoughts on today's session. One thing that stuck out for me was this morning Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley waving that warning flag, saying that markets could see a 10 to 20% correction over the next year or two, even after this record-breaking rally. They emphasized that a pullback of 10 to 15% is not a crash, but rather a healthy pause in a market that's driven and surged by AI hype and sky-high valuations. We saw David Solomon and Ted Pick stressing that the correction, when it comes, it could happen quickly and even without a major trigger. And guests that we've spoken to today say that the takeaway for investors should be to just stay alert and expect some turbulence, which we certainly saw today, particularly in Bitcoin, heading into November under some major pressure, falling to right now, right at that 100,000 mark, $100,043. Our largest cryptocurrency experiencing a sharp sell-off. Prices are down more than 6% just today, having lost more than 9% over the last 2 days, amid concerns that the AI trade may be losing momentum. Bitcoin's price has been trending downward over the past few weeks. October, historically a strong seasonality for them, failing to materialize for Bitcoin this year. The last time we saw this kind of performance from the cryptocurrency was back in 2018, and that November that followed, Bitcoin plunged 37%. So something to keep an eye on here as we just now, as I'm looking at the Bitcoin price, tipped back into that 99,000 territory. Sam, what caught your eye, though?
Well, obviously, we've heard from a big chip name just now, Marley. But, going into this, we very much saw technology and semiconductors under pressure today. And part of this broader risk-off sentiment has very much been fueled by what you said with regards to some of the Wall Street CEOs. But something worth highlighting as part of this whole valuation conversation was something I brought up earlier, which also happened in the Asian session alongside Solomon and Pick's warnings. And that is that the Korean exchange issued investment caution over SK Hynix shares. Now, why is this important? Bear with me. SK Hynix supplies HBM products to NVIDIA, and it has been on a roll lately. It rallied over 200% this year, and on Monday it was up over 10% before actually falling over 5% last night after this warning from the Korean exchange. Now, the Korean Kospi has been hitting new highs, helped by continued optimism around solid tech earnings there, but also fueled by deals that we're seeing stateside with NVIDIA, OpenAI, and Amazon. So here's the link here. Memory names have really been on a tear lately as the AI boom has led to tighter supply and higher prices. And so, obviously seeing a move like this is something to pay attention. But heading into tomorrow, Marley, what will you be looking out for?
More earnings, Sam, and hopefully a day where positive earnings and great forward-looking guidance does reflect some companies moving in positive territory. But Novo Nordisk will be in focus for me. They report earnings tomorrow morning. Expectations calling for EPS of 66 cents on revenue of $11.84 billion. Now, the timing very interesting here because this report comes as the company is being sued by Pfizer for its unsolicited $6.5 billion bid to buy Metsera. Pfizer is actually suing both companies, saying that Novo is trying to stamp out competition in the weight loss market and that Metsera breached its obligations under the takeover deal that it had with Pfizer. So any commentary around this potential Metsera deal and if it could become a reality could lead to a big move for the stock. Metsera is an obesity-focused biotech, and Novo, of course, makes the big-name semaglutides, Wegovy and Ozempic. We're also getting McDonald's reporting before the bell, and that all-important same-store sales metric will be in focus. Wall Street expects EPS of $3.33 on revenue of $7.09 billion for the quarter, which would put both the top and bottom lines up about 3%. Another closely watched number will be the digital loyalty program. After the company set a goal of reaching 250 million 90-day active loyalty users by the end of 2027. And we've heard so much conversation around how much these loyalty programs are driving sales and growth numbers for not just the restaurant industry, but also for Uber and Lyft and these kind of companies. So I'll be keeping an eye on those. But lots of earnings tomorrow. How about you, Sam?
Oh, very much so, yes. Well, I'll be watching the Supreme Court because it's going to be starting to hear arguments tomorrow in a case that will determine what happens to President Donald Trump's tariffs. Now, this will be centered around whether Trump stepped over his authority under IEEPA to put tariffs on trading partners everywhere from 10 to 50%. So the president writing on Truth Social over the weekend that he won't be going to the court, adding that it will be the most important and consequential decision ever made by the Supreme Court. Now, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent saying today that he is confident in the case, but that they have options in the event that it actually loses that. Now, something else that we should pay attention to tomorrow also, Marley, is that ADP report. Obviously, with the lack of data, we will be getting that in the 8-hour Eastern. And this is obviously going to be important because it's going to give us an idea of that downside risk to the labour market that the Fed is so hyper-focused on at the moment. So I suppose watch the dollar, given that we've obviously got the DXY at a 3-month high, and also watch those Treasury yields, as we mentioned at the top of the show with our guest, as that has very much been key to the movement there.
Yes, and once tomorrow starts, we'll be in the longest government shutdown that's ever happened. They failed to pass a funding bill about 2 hours ago. So unless something else changes, we will be in the longest government shutdown and still in that data blackout, but we will have that ADP data. But that's going to do it for us today on Market on Close.